All right, so the plan is to get all those baby chicks moved out of our house. There are just too many of them, and it's they need more space. And so we're going to be moving them out to the old pole barn chicken coop, for those of you who have been following along. But I need to get a feeder out there. Now, this is what we've been using, this little store-bought feeder, and this works really well. But as these chickens get bigger, they're going to run through this about twice a day. And so we've got, I think, 24 chickens, baby chicks in there. So I'm going to build something a little bit bigger. There's lots of different ways to build chicken feeders out there. There's all kinds of people doing all kinds of different things all over the internet. But I'm going to try to do something pretty simple here to kind of mimic this idea, with holes in the bottom of it. And then the top part will be filled with feed. We're going to do the same thing with the bucket here. We're going to make some holes around the bottom and design it in a way that the feed won't just fall right out, that the chicks will be able to reach in there and get some food. I'm going to do this as simple as possible. We're going to use a bucket, a hole saw, and a hair dryer as a heat gun to try to bend some of this plastic. So let's dig in and see how it turns out. So whenever you're using a hole saw in plastic, you can get it started by running it in forward. And then once it gets started, you want to run it in reverse, and it'll actually burn through the plastic without biting in so hard, and it'll really wrench on your drill if you're going forward. These teeth are so rough. What I'm doing here is I'm just using it on an angle, and I'm trying to basically just get a drilled hole at the bottom and leave the top intact. And I'll show you what we're going to do here once I'm done. You can use any kind of bucket. This is just a bucket that I have a bunch of. These are old frosting buckets. You get these for free at places like Meijer's and Walmart, or bakeries or anything like that around town. You can ask them for their extra frosting buckets, and they work really well for stuff like this. I use these for maple syrup, so I have a bunch of extra of these laying around. So now that we have our flaps kind of all cut in here, the next thing I'm going to do is work on getting those bent on an inward angle to hold the feed back just a little bit. So I want them to kind of bend back just like that, so that the feed will come down and the baby chicks will have an area where they can get at the feed, but it's not going to all just pour out. So I'm just going to heat this up a little bit, press them in, and hopefully get them to stay somewhere at an angle like that. I'm going to try to put a little different pressure on it. Now, it'll work just like this, but we are going to get some feed that's going to be leaking out. I'll show you what I mean. That first little bit of feed does get out here, and the chickens, of course, are going to eat it out of there. They're going to be pecking it out of here, and a lot of it's going to be falling out of the bucket here. I have a feeling that's going to be an issue. So I have an idea on how to solve that. So I have another bucket here. This is a 3-gallon bucket. This is a 4-gallon bucket, and so it's a little bit bigger on the bottom. And so I'm going to cut a lip of this off about this much, so we just have a little tray that we can actually set the feeder inside. So I'm going to cut this off with a circular saw. Looks like that plastic has gotten a little brittle over the years, but that'll work. So I cut a hole out in the center here because it was kind of a bump in this lid, and it just made this thing not sit flat on there. So this will make it sit flat, and that's not going to hurt anything because this is going to be covering that. I'm just going to take a couple nuts and bolts and secure these two together, and I think we'll have us a nice little feeder. Okay, so this is going to be their little spot. This is the pole barn chicken coop, and it's all enclosed. There's chicken wire all the way up to the roof, and this whole thing is enclosed. This is a bigger chicken coop with the nesting boxes and the door back there and the roost and all that. But what I've done is just sectioned off a smaller part of it here. I'm gonna have two heat lamps hanging here. I've got one inside on them right now. I've got the bigger water, and then I've got the feeder over here. This will give them a lot of space to spread out. They won't be picking at each other so much, and it'll be a lot better situation for them. They're safe in here, they'll be warm, and they'll have plenty of food and water. And they'll also have nice new neighbors. So Lily the goat, who should be giving birth here in the next week or two, so she's been isolated. And then some noisier friends over here in a nearby stall. So it is time to get these baby chicks out of my house and into the barn where they belong. I think this little feeder is going to work out really well for them, and it's just something that you can throw it together with 5-gallon buckets or anything that you have laying around. There's lots of creative ways to make watering systems and feeding systems for baby chicks, or for chickens in general. Chickens are such an easy animal to keep. There's just so many different ways to feed and water them that's kind of automated. That much feed in there in that 3-gallon bucket, that should last about a week, with these baby chicks. So we shouldn't have to fill it very often. And that big 5-gallon water thing I have in there too, that was purchased, but that should also last them about a week. So obviously we'll check it every day. As always, the idea is to keep things simple with caring for animals and to make sure that they have everything that they need, but make sure that we're getting our hands in there the least amount of time as possible. So each day, the least or the less that I have to do as far as daily chores go, the better off everything's going to run, the more automated it is. So if I have to feed an animal, fill up a feeder, fill up a water once a week, that makes my life much, much, much easier. Keep putting them in. Transportation box. We'll take 2 batches out here. We have one that they were pecking at. It's got a little bit of an injury, that white one over there. It's kind of being covered, but we may have to keep an eye on him. I took him out and separated him today, and they were all picking on him in the light. So I'm going to keep it darker out there for the first few days. See, they'll start picking up that blood right away as soon as they see it. So I'm going to keep it darker out in the new area, and hopefully that will solve that issue while he heals up. He's a rooster. Normally we can keep these babies in the house for a little bit longer. These are only about 2 weeks old, and so unfortunately we've got some cooler weather coming up over the next few nights. But I think I've got 2 heat lamps in here, real low to the ground. They're about a foot off the ground. I think it'll get a nice warm area for them. I have had baby chicks out in colder weather than this before, and they've done really well, especially when there's this many of them. We've never had this many hatch out. Generally our hatch rates have been a lot lower, our fertility and hatch rates. We have 1 rooster with 9 hens, and that has really done well this year. I don't know why, we just had a really good hatch rate with everything. And so we have 24 chickens in this batch. We may do another batch later on this summer, but 24 is pretty good for us out of the 40 eggs or so that we put in for in the incubator. They have a lot more room to run around in here, which is nice. So the water that I have here, I bought locally at TSC. I do like the metal waters better than the plastic ones generally, but this one I beat up really bad in the wintertime. It got frozen a few times a couple years ago, and I really beat the ice out of it, and it doesn't quite work as well as it used to. The little plastic feeder that I made out of that bucket, those are so simple to make. You can make feeders out of all kinds of stuff. I have a feeder in here that's made out of plywood and pipe. I've done a PVC or a drain pipe, 4-inch drain pipe feeder that we've done in our other coop. You can make big feeders out of trash cans. You can do all kinds of different things with chicken feeders. So this is just a simple way. It took me about 20 minutes to make, and this will work really well for our brooders. I really did not want to use this barn chicken coop again, the pole barn chicken coop. Mixing animals together, I've got goats and pigs in the barnyard, and now I'll have chickens in the barnyard. The chickens fly over the fence, they get out, they get into everything. It's hard to get feeding. You know, baby goats and baby pigs are getting in the chicken coop, and it just becomes kind of a mess to separate everyone. So I will be someday having a really great sustainable chicken operation that I will build, but right now we'll raise these guys out and we'll take the best care of them that we can. They're loud. I do have to keep an eye on that one that they started picking at. Once chickens see blood on a baby chick anywhere, they can pick at a feather. Sometimes it's just an itchy spot, and the chicken starts to pull a feather out, or something happens where they get a little raw spot. That all the chickens will see that, and they'll constantly peck at it until they break the skin, and then it bleeds more, and then more chickens peck at it. It gets really bad, and so I've let him heal up now for a day, and everything's dried up and healed over, so we'll see how that turns out. I'll keep an eye on him, check on him tomorrow, and if there's still an issue, then I'll have to separate him probably for 3 or 4 days and let that really heal up well. These guys grow amazingly fast at this stage in their life, so we'll keep feeding them, keep water, give them some warmth, and they'll thrive. They'll do really well. So don't forget to hit thumbs up on today's video, and of course subscribe to the SSL Family Dad channel. Love to have you tag along. Lots more chicken things coming up, and of course gardening. We'll be planting our garden here probably next week, and lots of updates on that. So love to have you tag along. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Have a good one.